Hello and welcome. I'm Allison, and today we're going to sit with and talk about our nervous system. Our nervous system as a broad topic, and specifically the vagus nerve and this idea of our nervous system being a communal nervous system. So I'm going to also start with a personal story about exploring and understanding my own vagus nerve. And this might resonate with some of you, or you may know somebody who has this kind of response. So, as being a young person, I always had a sort of response in my own nervous system when I would go to do a blood draw or I would see blood. And I had heard this story from my own mother that, oh, you've just inherited this sensitivity to having your blood drawn from your own dad, and my dad got that from his dad. Where that experience would be, I would go to sit down to get my blood drawn, or I'd have to sit down because if I were to look at it or see blood in any way, I would get this feeling over my system that my heart rate was slowing down. I would start to feel dizzy and faint, and in some cases I would drop so low in my heart rate, it would pound a little bit and then it would drop down really low, and then I would start to get sort of a spinny kind of fuzzy feeling. And this would happen over and over again, and until I realized, it was somewhere in my 20s that I realized that this was happening within my nervous system, and that as I started practicing yoga and I started being able to regulate consciously my nervous system response, I could have some success going into getting my blood drawn or having to go for just a standard process at the hospital without having that nervous system response. For me, it also included sweating, shakiness, and a real variability of my heart rate. Later down the line, as I started studying somatics, I found out that this was actually there's a response, it's called vasovagal syncope. I think SYNCOPE. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but it's a vagal nerve response, meaning that nerve is being overstimulated and it's changing your heart rate, and it's also going and affecting all your other organs, and then that's a real thing that happens. It can happen for some people, as I read more about it, getting your blood drawn, seeing blood. For some people it's standing for long periods of time, extra straining, especially during bowel movement, and it can also happen with extreme heat. That there is an overstimulation of this nerve that's basically, it's almost like preparing the body for shutting itself down, is what I've felt that as. And the exciting thing about getting a harness on that vagal nerve response for myself is that I was able to study a little more of how to work with that nervous system response. And I found two ways that helped me during those moments of the vagal nerve overstimulation to help myself. And before I go into that, I just want to say that there are 12 cranial nerves, and the vagus nerve is cranial nerve number 10. And it's called the wandering nerve because it goes through the brainstem, and then it attaches, or it has points of traveling through most all of our major organs. The heart, lungs, it goes down, and I think the terminus is somewhere in the intestines or the gut. So it's sending not only sensory information, it's picking up sensory information, and it's sending those motor impulses. So it's a sense-motor connection. So broadly, if you're somebody who is experiencing heart rate variability, digestive issues, those are two of them that I might right away think of. It's possible that this could be happening within the organ. It could be something you're eating, it could be something with the heart, but another layer that you might be able to explore is the vagus nerve, because an overstimulation or a poor tone of the vagus nerve connecting and receiving information from your organs could also look like something like heart rate variability or digestive issues, etc. So it's not to say that all of those things are always vagus nerve related, but it's really wonderful to think about the health of the vagus nerve as this major thoroughfare through the body. And we, again, have some agency and ability to work with the health of that vagus nerve. We'll call it vagal nerve tone. So I like the word tone because it reminds us when we're working on the skeletal muscular system that we can tone a muscle, but we can also tone and work with this nerve. Whether we have that kind of response, that vasovagal response in ourselves, or if if we're just wondering about the health in the connection between our nervous system and our organ system. Why this is so important right now is one of the features that produces and helps a healthy vagal tone is face-to-face connection and social connectedness. And the thing about social connectedness and face recognition is that improves the tone of the vagus nerve, which then is speaking to our organs. It creates a sense of wellness and safety if we are perceiving that social connectedness as a nourishing thing. So this is the important piece, the perception of the social connection and the perception of face to be a nourishing experience. So what can happen with a vagus nerve that is interpreting socialness or connectedness as a threat, or a person who has had some history of complex post-traumatic stress, is that facial features and social connectedness may be perceived as a threat. And if that's something that happens within the system over time, that vagus nerve, that vagus nerve that is responsible for rest and digest and parasympathetic function and tend and befriend functions, those parasympathetic aspects of our health and our organ health, there's going to be a little more of an impairment. So if we look out to a face or a social setting and we feel that visceral response of tightening, or the vagus nerve, like if we feel our heart rate starting to increase, there may be some signals that there is part of the nervous system that is interpreting socialness or connectedness as a threat. So there is an ability to work with the perception of social connectedness and safety in order to improve the vagal nerve tone. The vagal nerve tone improvement then sends and receives better information from your organ system. So you're starting to see this nervous system, organ system, and communal system. Their inner and outer is not all the way separate. We do have agency in our nervous system. We have agency with our breath and what we are eating and how we treat our gut biome and how we have our probiotics and a lot of healthy food. But we are also moderated and modulated by our interaction with the outside environment. So even if we were all treating ourselves incredibly well with our breath practice and our meditation practice, and we were feeding ourselves, that our perception and connection, or lack thereof, of interfacing with the social world and other living beings, including nature, has an impact directly on the tone of our nervous system via the vagus nerve. When I found that I was having this vasovagal response in myself to having blood drawn and realizing my temperature regulation would be off during that process, And I started to learn more about yoga and how to feel grounded in myself even when my nervous system was fidgeting or flashing a little bit. Two things is what I found helped me. One was working with alternate nostril breathing on airplanes, or when I was going to get my blood drawn. I would sit before I had to interact with somebody, and I would literally breathe in one side, close off the airflow, and I would count to 4 or 6, and then I would let air out on the other side of my nostril. And that pausing, that space between breath, I was able to root or settle into myself. It prevented my heart rate from doing the fluctuation, because I could feel the heart, but that taking agency or control over the breath, I was able to moderate that heart. So there's one way I was working with the heart, but then via the breath going into the nervous system. And I still use that when I'm taking off on a plane or I'm coming down. So any place where I start to feel a little bit of that, the heart starting to either beat very fast and then kind of go slow. And another indicator for me would be cold hands. And it's been wonderful to, instead of interpreting this as there's the fear response, I'm going into the fight or flight freeze, I'm able to say, oh, here's a piece of how that's happening. How about I get in there and kind of work with it? So it takes the fear out of the fear response. So it may be fear, but I'm no longer as afraid of that fear as I once have been, because I've got these tools. The other thing, which is more recent for me to notice about this vagal nerve response in myself, is that one way to keep me present so that my heart rate would stabilize and I wouldn't go further down that kind of spiral, is that I would ask the person who was with me to ask me questions, and that I would start to have a dialogue with them. And that if I had a dialogue with them, and if they would ask me just simple things of, what are you going to do after this, or what do you like to do, then I could talk to them, and I would just ask them, be very direct, to keep talking to me and asking me questions. And I did not know, it was an intuitive thought at first, I did not know this was going to be moderating my nervous system, but I realized over time that I was asking and reaching out for connection and reaching out for people interacting with me in order to regulate myself in times that felt, in the past, felt overwhelming. And in that way, I was redoing the situation. I was finding and reaching into a situation that had been scary for me in the past and replacing the same situation with tools, breathing, and asking for that positive social interaction. And as silly as it sounds to completely talk to somebody about your cat or your dog or what you might be doing later, it's something that we do in our interactions all the time with each other. So today, as we're talking about nourishment for the vagus nerve and our nervous system, in a time when many of us are isolated or we're having to be isolated, because in the current time we are in a pandemic situation, I also want to lift up this idea that even if we're not in a situation where we're having social isolation or we're in a pandemic, our society has moved collectively more and more to these automatic kind of, even at grocery stores, payments or situations where we can do a lot of online work and do a lot of online study, and technology can be wonderful. But the other idea that happens when we have technology or that we start to isolate more is that our communal nervous system, our nervous system that is regulated internally and externally, we start to truncate parts of that. And at extremes, if we start becoming afraid to reach out and connect, to touch, to eye gaze, to sit next to somebody, to be in proximity, if we lose that ability to have that nourishing perception, then we are cutting off a piece of our own nervous system. So while it's very important to to honor where we are right now, it's equally as important to cultivate the perception of felt social connection. And we can do this surprisingly with the people around us if we've got somebody in our home, because just because someone is there doesn't mean we're connecting with them, because perception of social connection happens through eye connection and touch, and setting in the moment in your presence and being with somebody face to face. And there is a difference between just having somebody there and having that connection with them. So one thing that we could do is ask for that connection with somebody that we're with. Animals provide us that connection too, and they are wonderful for helping to tone our nervous system. One other thing that we can do if we are by ourselves more often, or we're working on helping our perception of social connection be nourishing, because some of us are still working with that idea, is that nature, in the frequency of nature and the beingness of nature, can allow us to rest in the presence with another living being that might be easier at first, because our earth is alive, and the trees and the mountains and the water, these are living beings. It's not exactly the same as a human being, but if we rest in the beingness of nature, we choose to go outside and have a conversation through our senses with nature, we are building that perception of social connectedness. For those of us who can go to a store, or we can go out on a walk and we see people, there is an ability also to rest in the presence with another. So you can be there and just gaze and look out. And in Hakomi, we used to call that the practice of loving presence, meaning that you spend a little time each day just sitting and finding something to appreciate about the beingness of somebody else or somebody that you're with. Can also go out into nature too, but we could do this just sitting in a park and looking out and appreciating the quality of somebody else's presence, and acknowledging that we are in a communal experience and a nervous system with them. So 2 ways, and breath we know about. Breath is a direct way into the parasympathetic nervous system, and you may have a breath practice, but simple, big breath in and a long breath out. Just a conscious awareness of doing that a few times a day, it doesn't have to be fancy, is helping tone our vagus nerve. So I hope that you've enjoyed some of this talk around our nervous system, the agency we have with it, and the importance of social connection and perceived social connection. Meaning that if social connection is hard or not available for you right now, that you can work at the perception of it. And in fact, you could even be watching this video right now and perceiving a connection with me by just settling into maybe one thing that you're appreciating about the experience of connecting in this kind of way. So it might be just enjoying the tone of my voice, or you're liking the way that the ideas are feeling for you, or you might just like the light or the ambience of the video, or the presence that's coming through, so that you're acknowledging that there's an energy there and that your energy is playing or interacting with that. So there's a way to do it even if we've got something between us. And if you've got about 8 minutes in this time, I would invite you to come into a small practice with me that is going to be highlighting a route into perceived social connectedness. So the magic of the nervous system is that we can work with the thing itself. We could eye gaze with somebody, we could go to a workshop, we could get a massage, we could touch somebody. That would all be working with cultivating the vagus nerve tone. But we can also sit in a meditation practice or a quiet place in this moment and reach into our perceptual qualities of connectedness. So I would invite you to get comfortable if you're wanting to try this with me, and I'll guide you through a social connectedness meditation. This meditation can be done sitting on the ground, or laying on the ground, or sitting in a chair, or even on your couch. Just make sure that wherever you're seated, you feel present, that you feel comfortable, and that you have a little bit of a quiet space. And once you get settled, we'll start with a few big breaths, just breathing in through your nose, and a long breath out through your mouth. Breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. Let's do one or two more of those full breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. And once you feel complete with those breaths, if you're comfortable, close your eyes and take a moment here with yourself to notice what is. How your body makes connection with the ground or whatever you're sitting on. Just being gentle and curious about what's moving as you're breathing. Noticing the front of your body and any sensations that might be present on the front of your body. Notice the sides of your body, the space at the side of your rib basket, your arms, hips, legs, and just notice any sensations on the sides of your body. Bringing some awareness to the back of your body. And being aware of any breath that you feel moving through the back of your body. Any sensations on the back of your body. And then take notice of the space above your head. Maybe even zoom out to that space all around your body. Maybe seeing that as either a light or a bubble or just a circle around your body, noticing that space. Both being aware of being a body and feeling the space around the body. And as we're moving through this meditation, just allow your awareness to be present with sensations or feelings or experiences that might arise. And In the practice of gentle somatic yoga and somatic study, we're wanting to be with just the presence of it without needing to make sense necessarily of why a sensation is there. So as you're sitting and breathing, as a feeling or sensation arises, just notice, just as you would be observing yourself. Allowing breath to flow and staying present with this now experience. Next, you'll hear me say just a short phrase. And notice your first feeling or sensation that arises. You'll hear the phrase 3 times. Notice your immediate response when I say, "You're welcome here." You're welcome here. You're welcome here. Take a moment with any sensations you're feeling and also with your breath. Having no sensations is also a good study too. If nothing comes up, just notice that. Breathing into the present moment. Let's take 2 or 3 cleansing breaths in through the nose. Out through the mouth. And just let that breath travel. We'll try one more study of a simple phrase, just being with the sensations that may come up, just your present experience. Maybe clearing the mind here if you need to do any little movements. Now is the time to just bring yourself back to a place of mindfulness and listening. Closing the eyes if that feels comfortable. Breathing. And then notice your first response and sensation when I say, "You belong here." You belong here. You belong here. Allowing whatever sensations or feelings that are present to just be there. Use your breath and your presence to be with that experience. integrate, we'll take 2 or 3 cleansing breaths from here, breathing in, breathing out through the mouth. Maybe 1 or 2 more of those, just to your comfort. For the last piece of this meditation, we're going to go into a perceived connection, a perceived positive social connection within our mind, within our heart, within our imagination. Before you go there, take a moment and remember that perceived connection is one that's of nourishment. And that might be with an animal, a person, a being in nature, a place of beauty. And if you sit in with yourself for just a moment, that thing that will feel like a nourishing, perceived social connection is going to have a felt sense. There's going to be something you will recognize in yourself. Some people might call that comfort or safety or love or ease or enjoyment or recognition. There's something about that connection that's softening, and that's actually a signal that we are in a healing place. Attend and befriend, vagal nerve building tone place in ourselves. So take a moment, if something hasn't already come to you, just feel the best you can into the perception of a nourishing social connection. Take a moment, drawing up the image or the situation and resting a moment. If you're comfortable closing the eyes, go ahead. And you're wanting to juice this image or this moment and notice the things you really like. That feels like it's almost filling up your cells. What you like about that connection. What you appreciate. And hang in there with that image. Maybe there's even a smell or a sound. Maybe there's a quality on your skin or the touch that you appreciate. If you find something that you really like, that you feel your system responding to, no matter how small or large, be with that for just a moment, that sensation. And while you're with the sensation, also be with the presence in your body in this moment. As you're holding that perception and what you like, knowing that you can access this at any time, that you have the agency and the consciousness to find this place. As we come through this meditation, take this moment in your mind or out loud to give an appreciation to whomever or whatever you're connecting with. It could be something simple like, I appreciate the time that you've given me, or I really appreciate the quality of your skin, or what you said. Let that be easy. So find an easy thing to just be with, as if you're offering that appreciation to the being or to the nature. And feel the way your appreciation resonates back with you through that other being. If you need to say goodbye, you can, knowing that you can always come back and start to come out of this meditation or this visualization by bringing a little more focus to your own breath and feeling maybe a big inhale, maybe like you're waking up from a nap, like you take a big yawn, and it might be a good thing to stretch out a little bit here. So however you're sitting or laying, you might yawn, breathe in, wiggle the fingers and the toes, and just breathe. Here, if the eyes are closed, you might flutter them open and return to the surroundings you're in right now. And take that in for a moment. You might look around if that helps reorient you. So you're taking in a little of your environment and you're still with yourself. We'll go into our final body scan, and your eyes can be open or closed, to bring us now to this present moment. Notice your breath. Notice what your energy feels like now. Noticing sensations on the front of the body, the sides of your body, and the back of your body. Space above the body, and the space around your body. Notice the quality of your presence now. You can take as long in this meditation or exploration as you like. Thank you for being here with me today. Namaste.